Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. Today, my guest is Libby Supan. Libby is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is a certified intuitive eating counselor, and she herself has recovered from an eating disorder that she had for over 20 years. And this is the reason why she actually went into the line of business that she did, because she felt so passionate about giving hope to those who are dealing with the same issue and a very concrete way of recovering. Libby does both therapy and coaching in her practice. She works with people who struggle with food and body image, and she mostly works with people who are sick and tired of thinking about food 24/7 and who want to be a quote unquote normal eater and rather than suffer from the binge resist cycle. She is on a mission, if you can't tell, to help as many people as possible relearn how to eat intuitively and live a life of food freedom. So I'm super excited to get into this. As I was telling her before we even started, as I was preparing for this, I just thought, this is going to be so amazing. She's just an amazing person. And I'm so excited to have you on the show, Libby. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I am so excited to be here. In our pre-interview, whenever that was, I think last week, I just was so overjoyed with knowing that today was coming. So I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, it is a joy for me too. So before we dive into your business, Libby, can you tell us a little bit about your own history? You mentioned that you had a history of eating disorders, and would you kind of walk us through what that was like with you? Like what caused it, and what did it look like for you?
Yes. Okay. So this can be a very long story. So I'm going to try to make it short, but give you the important stuff.
Good.
So what causes any one eating disorder are so many different variables and factors, but all kind of like similar ingredients, if you will. So the way I explain it to people, because a lot of times people are like, why do I have an eating disorder and my sister doesn't? So it's kind of like you have these like kind of things brewing underneath, if you will. So like for me, it was perfectionism, codependency, anxiety, depression, a parent who was a workaholic, a parent who, did a lot of physical abuse, diet culture and fat phobia was a big part of my household. I was really into dance. So like body image stuff, the good kids, straight A's. So those were all the things kind of already brewing. And then for me, and not that this happens for anyone or everyone, but for me, what happened is kind of the one, I guess, the last straw, if you will. So kind of the triggering event. And for me, it was a really traumatic move. So as a family, we moved the summer in between 8th grade and freshman year in high school. So we moved to different areas in California. And, it's a move. Even saying it out loud, I feel silly. Like it was a move. How was that traumatic? It was very traumatic. And I don't need to get into all the things, but it was basically like the thing that triggered me to take action and start doing disordered behaviors. And the way that started was freshman year in high school. I started restricting food a little bit. And I thought, if I just lose a little weight, which I did not have any weight to lose, I thought, maybe it'll be better. Maybe I'll make friends. Maybe it will. I mean, I don't think that this was like a conscious thought, but I think back somewhere, I had the idea that if I get better, because, thinner is always better, at least the messages I received, then maybe I'll make friends. Maybe I'll feel better about myself. Maybe I'll be more confident. Maybe this experience in this new town will be better. So that's really how it started. And I, sophomore year in high school, I made some friends, and so it was a little bit better. I didn't feel as depressed or anxious going to school, home life was still the same, but, so it kind of like dissipated, if you will. It was still there. Like I never got help or anything. I just kind of was eating a little bit more regularly and not so freaked out about food and, weight gain. So when it really, really kicked in and was my biggest fear was going to college and gaining the freshman 15, like to the point where I couldn't sleep at night before I went away to college. And so when I went away to college, I actually did not step foot into the dining halls for like a month and a half. And my roommate, I thought she was going to like tell someone on me. I was kind of freaked out. So I finally was like, okay, you need to go to the dining halls. You're being weird. So, and I was just afraid that I was going to binge eat and not be able to stop if I went into the dining halls. And that is exactly what happened because
Mhm.
I had come from the restriction mindset before and I was still there. So, yeah, so college and after college, it was just turned into the scariest thing ever, which was the binging. And so at first it was like, okay, how can I compensate? Because now I can't stop eating. I got to get rid of it. So I physically couldn't do self induced vomiting. It didn't work for me, fortunately. So I did other things like I did compulsive over exercise and I went real hard on diets and restriction, only to then binge, later on.
Again, right.
Yeah. And then at some point, like after years of doing that, I it was like I couldn't diet anymore. I didn't have another restriction in me. So then it was just binge eating disorder. And I could not stop gaining weight. I gained and this was my own head. Nobody ever told me I had to quit cheerleading. So I did cheerleading and dance in college. And junior year in college, I ended up quitting cheer because I didn't fit in the uniform anymore. And I could not bear to get a bigger size and have anyone know. It was just like this most I don't know, most embarrassing like secret that it was like I held, even though I'm sure people saw. So yeah, so junior year in college, I quit cheerleading and like I've been through many depressive episodes, and this was one of them. Um, at some point, I just stopped going on the scale because I couldn't see it keep going up. Like I was so afraid I was gonna like explode one day. Like I didn't know like where is this gonna take me? Like I can't stop gaining weight.
Like a
And
fear of the
so
unknown with it, right?
totally, like it's
Yeah.
so bad right now and it's only ever gotten worse. Like how can this be worse? So it was just constantly living in fear and panic and kind of that like white knuckling it feeling. So throughout all of this, I tried looking for help. I was denied by my insurance. They would not let me go to real treatment because I was not underweight, which is our fat phobic society. So again, that's
Mm.
another message you receive when you have an eating disorder, like, oh, I'm not even sick enough. I'm not even bad enough for people to believe me that I need help, even though I knew I was like, what I'm doing is not normal.
Well, and I think
Um,
that actually bleeds into other things too, because I have seen that with money as well and the welfare system.
oh
Very, very
yeah.
much. It's the same kind of a thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Yeah. So we were at a point in my life where like the recession hit us super hard. We were underemployed and I was seeking help. And here's the crux of it. I knew I was having a miscarriage at the time, and I knew I was
Okay.
going to have to go in and have a procedure, and I knew it was going to cost me a lot of money. I had
Yeah.
this money saved up, and I went in and knowing that, like this was how we were going to pay for that procedure.
Yeah.
I went in to get help, financial help with, from welfare, and because I didn't know what else to do, who else to turn to, right? And
Sure.
they told me, we cannot help you until the last of your savings is gone, which was absolutely devastating for me because then it was like, well, then what? Like
Right.
if I wait, like it was just so hard. So
Oh,
yeah, I totally understand that having
yes,
to deal with that mindset around you. Yeah, so
totally.
hard. So
Oh
hard.
man. Oh, and this could be a whole other discussion about all the systems in our
Oh,
country,
I
but we
know. I
won't go
know. It's
there.
like so jacked up.
Totally. I know. So anywho, so what I did is, so I went to many different therapists, just one on one, and I don't know. It was like, how do I know more about my problem than you, the professional? And so all these therapists I saw, probably I went through 20. They just kind of made it worse and made me feel worse. So I ended up joining Overeaters Anonymous. I was there for 15 years, having no clue that being there and their model was actually making the eating disorder stronger and more powerful. And I didn't know that until I finally, literally after 15 years of being in Overeaters Anonymous, my insurance finally accepted me into an outpatient eating disorder treatment program. And that is where I received the message. The seed was planted. And I wouldn't say I was recovered after treatment because my insurance, I only got like 3 months of being there when I probably needed a full year in residential, but it
Right.
doesn't work that way. So, yeah, so that's kind of the story. And ever since that seed was planted when I went to treatment, I just knew it was just such a one of the biggest kind of like eye-opening experiences with the information that I received being there. And it was like, I knew what I had to do. I knew the actual answers and I knew what I can't do any longer. So
That's
yeah, I guess
empowering.
that's the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it about Overeaters Anonymous that didn't work?
Oh,
Because I
yeah.
mean, that's a
So
big program.
it very much is. So
Yeah.
what I'll say is I know, to each their own. If it works
Right.
for you,
Right.
that's great. For me, my eating disorder stemmed from the idea of restriction. And there was then secondary and, all the other reasons why I had an eating disorder. But like the very first thing was food and the lack of, and the thinking
Hmm.
that food is bad. So it's like part of it is I can be eating this donut. So I'm not physically restricting, but the whole time, oh my God, I can't believe you're eating this donut. You're going to have to go work out. Oh my God, like I can't believe you're doing this. This is so gross. So you're going to eat the whole dozen. So why I'm saying this is because in OA, generally speaking, and I'm not saying this as a black and white statement, but generally speaking,
Right.
Overeaters Anonymous is known as actually being black and white. And they are a model of like sobriety and a model of abstinence. So, like with alcohol, it's you just don't drink drugs, you just stop doing drugs. So, with food, obviously, you have to eat. But what
Right.
OA kind of took was as long as you avoid and abstain from your binge foods, you're good and you're clean and you're abstinent. But the second you eat one of your binge foods, which is sugar, fat, carbs, which are most people's binge foods,
Right.
you have to start over. You have to, if you're working with sponsees, you have to get rid of them and let them know you broke your abstinence. You have to start all over. Um, and 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 that is the exact reason why I was there in the first place, because I was restricting food. I did not know that that is in fact the reason why I'm so freaked out from food and why I'm binging on the food in the first place was because of the way I thought about food, because I'm so freaked out from it.
Well, and the anxiety from the consequences, like I'm sure that just fueled, the whole thought pattern
Yes.
there.
And the guilt and the shame and the
Yeah.
embarrassment, like not just within myself, but, I had a sponsor and it was like every time I ate something bad, I had to tell her, like, she was my mom and I'm not blaming her. She's still in my life. There's
Hmm.
like her and her husband are still probably will be my good friends for forever. But as the organization as a whole, I have a lot of resentment about it. I've done webinars on it. But again, like if it works for you, that's
Great.
great. Keep doing
Right.
it. So that was my
Well, I
experience.
think
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing that you finally recognize this is not working, but you probably didn't understand why until you got into that other therapy, right?
totally. And I just, you know, part of the problem with 12 steps, or I guess Overeaters Anonymous for me and my sake, was the day you arrive, the day you walk into your first meeting, the first message you get is, you've arrived, you're home. This is the last block on the house. There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing else you can do. This is it. And I
Yeah.
believed it. I believed it, even though I was still trying to get into treatment. I really believed it. So, and that's really not helping somebody when being in that program isn't helping. I mean, it was just this like, if this is it, if this is the last house on the block, like, how am I not getting better?
Well, and that's a
What am I
depressing
not
thought,
doing? Yeah, I
right?
mean, it was, yes, I was depressed, but it was more just terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. Yeah.
So once you got into the treatment program, how did that differ? Like, what were the seeds that were planted in your
Oh
head?
man. Okay. So it was like seed number one.
Yeah.
Guess what? Diet culture is a thing. What's diet culture? What do you mean?
That's
What's that?
huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I learn, oh my gosh, wait a second. Wait a second. Back up. You're telling me the restriction is the problem? And so it was really hard for me to believe it. It was kind of like, I don't know at first when I was in treatment. But then after a while, like really just getting all the information, being in all these different groups, like being in the intuitive eating group and and just all these different, you learn so much, you get so much knowledge when you're in treatment. It's not just therapy, you're actually getting, it's kind of like going to school in a sense. You're in different like groups and classes, and you get so much information. And so it was like, okay, this information is actually by professionals and, you know, psychologists and researchers, and it's not by, random people in 12-step groups. And not to compare the two, but it finally was, I was able to look at it and say, you know what? Maybe I've been wrong. Maybe what I've been doing is the exact thing as to like what's brought you here in the first place. So yeah, the biggest message I got was that the restrictions is the problem. And so today, I mean, not really today, because I don't really think about it, but so in my recovery process, like out of treatment, when I was out of treatment, I was still struggling and still working on it for a while. But the message I now had told myself was, okay, as long as you don't restrict, like you're going to be okay and you will get there eventually. Because in my mind, it was like, okay, so now I know every single time you restrict, there's a binge in your future, whether it's right now or in a day or in a week. And the binging is the scariest thing. So, like, you better believe I wasn't going to restrict if I knew I was going to binge later.
Okay, so how do you do that then? If you know, okay, I can't restrict anything, and
Yeah.
yet you have this history of
Yeah.
binge eating. So
How do you
how do
do
you
it?
walk that fine line? I mean, that had to have been a skill that was so vital for you to learn. So walk us through that.
So it's not easy, and the longer you're in the disorder, whether it's disordered eating or an eating disorder, the harder it is to like kind of break. So, yes, I mean, I was fully embraced, and like my whole brain had been so conditioned to believe that like certain foods were bad. And that, I mean, it was like when you have an eating disorder, you live in a different world, you see the world differently. And so it took a really long time, and it was really slow. I mean, years, and it still continues to get better. And it's a lot of times it's not even like I'm trying to make it better, but like this year it's better than last year, but it's not like last year was bad. It was great with
Right.
as far as like food and body image stuff goes. But yeah, so at first, well, for me, it was like I actually don't even know what I like anymore. I'm so conditioned to eating the nasty diet foods, and I tricked myself into thinking I liked them. And also that I'm like obsessed with my binge foods. What do I even like? So I started doing these blind taste tests with myself. And so what I would do is like, let's say I'd have these like two of the same bowls. And on the bottom, I'd put like a little post-it with, I'd
Right.
either put like, low carb and regular. So like one thing I did was like low carb tortilla, regular tortilla. I did like full fat yogurt, like fat free yogurt. So I just kind of did that, and I would just taste test it and then, look at the bottom. And it was interesting because some of the foods I actually liked the diet version better. But again, as time goes on, that changes. And so the first thing I really did was decrease the diet foods that I purchased, decrease, yeah, just decrease the amount of like diety products I brought into my home. And I'm telling you, like, it's not easy. Like, this takes a really long time. And I had to be working with people during this dietitian, psychiatrist, therapist. Um, yeah. Did I say dietitian? So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, like having that support. Oh, and group therapy and
Hmm.
being in groups, like that also is super key, because you can listen to your therapist all day long, but at some point you're kind of like, okay, like, well, that's you saying it. Like,
Yeah,
you're the
you're not
professional.
walking the walk, right?
Right, right.
Right.
But knowing that you're going through this with, other people, and like, oh, you've been through this too. How did you get through it? Or, yeah, I'm doing this. Like, this is how I did it. Um, so yeah, I don't even remember
That's
what the question
empowering.
was.
Well, I know, but what you said was perfect. So I, the way as you're talking, I was like, to give yourself permission to
Mm,
change is scary when you have
yeah.
been so entrenched in something, because there's so much shame encompassed in that. And to be, because for me, when I've experienced stuff like this, it's like, okay, but I put so much effort and so much of my time into this one way of
Mm,
thinking and doing things that, to give myself this, even if I believe that
mm,
this new way is a good way to go, to actually do it and give yourself that permission without the shame
yeah,
is hard, super hard. So that's
very
that's
much.
awesome. You had such a great support system. Do you think you could have done it without that support?
Absolutely not. Never. No way. Not, no, not 1%. There's no way. Because I read all the books, I did all of it. I read all the books. I went to all the free things. Like, no, it didn't help.
Yeah. Well, and just being able to receive that help, that's a big step too. So
Yeah,
kudos to you because
definitely.
that is really hard to change, you know.
Yes.
I have a cousin who is um a food disorder specialist. She's a
Okay.
therapist. And
Okay.
so, obviously you can't talk about any of your clients, but she has told me that she will struggle. Like she doesn't have struggle with food or anything, but she struggles with her own, I don't know how to say this, but I just know
Mm-hmm.
that she's like, I have to make sure that I go to therapy too, because
Totally.
it's
It's a
hard
lot.
for me. Yeah, yeah.
It's a
So
lot.
yeah, and
I
she's
have
just a
my own therapy.
therapist. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So now you're on a different kind of a system. So tell
Mm-hmm.
us, and I know part of that is intuitive eating. You mentioned you were in a class for that. So will you explain what that is? Because we kind of talked about this balance between binge eating and restriction, not restricting. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like perhaps the intuitive eating is that solution, right? So
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but
Totally.
explain that
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah. So when you are, okay, so when you have an active eating disorder, intuitive eating is not appropriate. You really need to, well, everyone is different. So
Right.
whenever you go get the help, like maybe you're somebody that needs a meal plan. I could not have a meal plan because to me it was like diet, diet, diet. I cannot, and
Mm.
it just felt like a diet. So for me, I really had to start just trusting myself. And it was at first like, okay, what do I like to eat? What tastes good and what's safe enough without restricting, which is still restricting, but
Hmm.
it's at least better, 1% better than what I was doing before. So that's kind of like how I initiated it. But what is intuitive eating? Okay. So I actually have a definition that I wrote down. So I'm going to read from my
Okay,
computer right
good.
now.
Good, good, good.
Okay. So here we go. Okay, so intuitive eating. It brings together our gut feelings, emotions, and thinking patterns into a collective whole. You are the expert on your own body. Only you know your thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Only you know how hungry you are and what food or meal will satisfy you. It's like having a team inside of you. You have your gut feeling teammates who help you make quick decisions, your emotion teammate who tells you how you feel, and your thinking teammate who helps you make smart choices. When they all work together as friends, they become really good at understanding themselves and making the right decisions. So it's kind of like, okay, overall, intuitive eating is a mindful and holistic approach to eating that encourages individuals to listen to their body's hunger and fullness cues rather than following strict diets or external rules. It's about reestablishing a healthy relationship with food, free from guilt or restrictions. In essence, it's all about eating based on your body's signals and nurturing a positive connection with food. I know that was really long. Yeah.
Okay, so interpret how you live
What does
that.
that mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's so much to intuitive eating. It's not just the hunger fullness diet, which most people think. It's not just eat everything you want, give yourself full permission. It's not just
Right.
that.
Right.
So most people are very confused with what is intuitive eating. And I even have a hard time explaining it because there is just so much that goes into it. So the way intuitive eating shows up for me in my life is I, unless I'm trying something new and I don't know what it tastes like, I only eat things that taste good, which is different for me. I really like the food that I eat. I love my diet, and I'm not on a diet, but when I say diet,
Right. Right.
um, I also, as much, not all the time, but I'd say maybe 80% of the time, I eat foods that serve my physical body. And maybe 20% of the time, I eat foods that serve my emotional self, my emotional brain, my emotional body, if you will. Um, so yeah, so everything in my house I really like to eat, and mostly it's going to serve my body. I don't put anything in my body that I know is going to like feel awful. So I'll give you some examples. So like let's say today. So let's say today I have a full day. I start at 8 a.m. and I'm not going to be done until 7 p.m. And I have to kind of be on all day and I need energy and I need to kind of like be with it. So let's say at 7 a.m. I'm eating breakfast and I'm wondering like, do I want eggs or do I want a donut? Well, I know for me and my body, a donut's fine, but it's not going to feel great. And it's not going to give me kind of like long lasting energy. So I could probably have the donut at the end of my day. Like, who cares? I'll, just eat dinner and go to bed. But maybe today's a better day to have like eggs for breakfast. So I am not restricting that donut, but just for right now, it's not going to serve me in my physical body. I'll have it later. So that's just kind of like one way. Another way is it also intuitive eating. It works with your life and your lifestyle. So a lot of times, like we're so conditioned with diet culture to follow these external rules and guidelines. And it's like, you can't eat till 12, you can't eat till 6. And but I'm starving at 11, and then you binge
Right.
later.
Right.
So another way I explain it is, okay, so let's say it's 12 p.m. right now, and I have to go into a 3-hour meeting. And right now, I'm not necessarily hungry. So let's say I'm at about a 5 on the hunger scale, which means I'm indifferent. I'm not
Mhm.
hungry and I'm not full. So I don't really want to eat right now, but I know myself. And in 3 hours, I might be at a 2, which is ravenous. And I know when I'm ravenous, I tend to eat more than it that will feel good. So, okay, I'm going to eat a snack right now and take care of myself. So when I get out of that meeting, I'll probably be ready for a meal and I'm not going to feel ravenous. So that's just kind of like another way it shows up. There's so many other things to it, but
Well, and two patterns that I'm seeing is number one, paying attention to your body
yes,
and understanding, like,
listening.
because I'm like you, that I can I don't really, I'm not that hungry in the mornings, but man, once it hits like 3 or 4, I'm like, just give me all the food. I want to shovel it right now. You know,
Yes.
right? And so I know that, okay, if I'm going to have that, I need to have healthier snacks, number one,
Hmm.
right? Because I know that's my tendency. And and then also I know that, okay, if I can eat my vegetables in the morning when, I'm a little bit more open to eating that, then
Hmm.
and that was a big mindset change for me, going from an all carb breakfast
Yeah,
to, having a salad for breakfast.
sure.
Like, I love eating salads for breakfast.
Oh, it's my
And they
favorite
they
food.
make me feel so good.
Yeah.
But then when I get to that afternoon, knowing that, okay, I have been really good, I can afford to eat a little bit more. And so
Hmm.
so I'm not like berating myself, like, oh, I can't
Yeah.
believe I ate all this food, but I've planned for it.
Yeah.
And so so I like that part of, paying attention to your body. But then I
Hmm.
also think there's an honesty there too. What does your
Hmm.
body really need? But I love
Right.
also that it's not just your body, it's what do my emotions need too?
Yes.
Because sometimes we're just in that place and
Right.
food is a comfort. It just
Right.
is. And so
Yes.
if you're planning for that, then, sometimes it just hits the spot. Like last night, my son came home and he's like, it's like 9 p.m. right?
Hmm.
So it's late and he said, "I need ice cream. Do you want to go with me?" And and
Oh,
and
that's so
so
sweet.
and he's 20, right? And so I'm like, number one, I want to spend time with him because that's important to me. And number two,
Totally.
I'm like, ice cream sounds amazing right
Hmm.
now, right?
Yeah.
So yes, let's go. So
I
so
love
we had a
that.
really fun outing last night, late at night. So
Yeah.
so yeah, just listening to all parts of your body. I love that you connected that as teammates. I think that's
Yes.
phenomenal.
And we have different types of hunger. We have taste hunger. So like maybe I just want to like taste it. Maybe it's not even emotional hunger, physical hunger, primal hunger. But one thing I will say, and like the very first spot where you start with intuitive eating. So there's 10 principles, and you really don't have to go in order. But when I'm working with people, I like to always start with the first principle, which is rejecting the diet mentality. And so really what you learn in that is to take away this diet culture umbrella from your world, and you're taking off morality of food. So I am not like in
Mm.
any way trying to like school you or anything, but I did hear you say that by the end of the day you said, "Oh, I was good today." which can be problematic language for people that
Mm,
struggle, you know?
that makes
So
sense. No, that totally makes sense.
yeah. So it's like there's no good or bad, there's no clean, there's no healthy, unhealthy. It's like it all just is. And it all can be healthy. You know, like a donut is absolutely healthy because I wanted it emotionally. It was going to taste really good that day. So anyways, yeah, it's like taking the morality off of it.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. I really appreciate that,
Yeah.
as you said that, I was like, okay, so what could I replace that with instead of I've been good? Just
I
say,
can tell you.
oh, yes, yes, tell me.
Okay. So instead of the word healthy, I like to say, okay, well, what do you mean? Because healthy is such a broad word, right? So it's like
Yeah.
healthy in what aspect? Oh, you ate healthy food. Okay. So because that's kind of puts it on a pedestal, like healthy's up here, unhealthy's down here. Sorry, my hands. Um, nutrient dense. So maybe like you could have said, you know what? I ate really get yeah, what have I tried to say? Nutrient dense foods today. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what? I am going to have something that tastes really good, something that is going to
Yes.
like fill my heart right now or
Yes.
whatever, fill my
That's
soul.
perfect. I think that's great. That's so good. Well, and it's also taking into the moment too, like
Hmm.
what's going on in that moment. Okay, so I've got a question though.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll crave something. So like a month ago, like I don't eat beef a whole lot,
Hmm.
but I was craving a hamburger like nothing else.
Okay.
And and so sometimes I wonder, well, I wonder if my body just needs the nutrients in what I'm
Hmm.
craving.
Hmm.
Because it wasn't necessarily any emotional. It was just like, I need a hamburger like now, like
Right.
stat,
Right.
right?
Like yesterday.
You know, and so we did. We went out and grabbed a hamburger, and it totally hit the spot. And I haven't craved a hamburger since then. So tell me
Yes.
about cravings like that. Like, what are they trying to tell us?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is you don't even need to think too much about it. And you don't have to think too much about it when you honor them.
Yeah.
Just like your experience. And I'm not saying it's like this for everyone, but yeah, you like just knew you needed that hamburger, you had it, and you're good. And you probably, yeah, you haven't even thought about hamburgers
Mm-mm,
since then.
mm-mm.
Yeah. And the same thing will happen for me. Like, I don't know, randomly, maybe I don't even know. I'm thinking of like Taco Bell for some reason because I haven't had it in so long. But like, I don't know, maybe one day I really want Taco Bell and I do. And I don't know, maybe I won't have it again for 10 years.
And that's
And I
okay.
don't, yeah, and
Both
it's
are
okay.
okay.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to necessarily mean anything, you know?
Okay. Yeah. I love that. That's so cool. Such great
Yeah.
insights. So what tell me about I mean obviously intuitive eating is the goal, right?
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily eating quote unquote healthy foods, right? It's really
Correct.
just listening to your body. So what are some pitfalls that we might fall into with doing
Yeah.
that?
Okay. So a couple things. I think a lot of times people, I don't think, I know, a lot of times people turn intuitive eating into a diet. A lot of times people will only go off hunger fullness. And kind of like I was sharing earlier with the example I gave with going into the meeting. Well, if you do that, you are kind of restricting yourself and then setting yourself up to have a binge urge later on. Um, but yes, I think most often what you will see out there in the world of people trying to promote intuitive eating, because most people don't know what it is and they don't fully understand it unless you really do the work. And not that you have to be certified in it to like understand it, but if you're certified, you definitely know, like, you're with a person that knows and they're safe. But yeah, I think so often people use it as a diet and they do the hunger fullness situation with it. Another thing people get tripped up on with intuitive eating is the concept of giving yourself full permission to eat, because that phrase is used a lot in intuitive eating, and you have to give yourself full permission to eat in order to be an intuitive eater. Because oftentimes people that get into intuitive eating do it because they're not an intuitive eater and they are struggling with some kind of aspect around food. So it's really giving yourself the full permission to eat whatever. And what that looks like is really messy. And I'm in the beginning. You go through a time period, most everyone I know, myself included, where you're eating a lot and you're eating a lot of foods that aren't necessarily good for your body. And it feels really uncomfortable, but your brain needs it. what happens is your body is no longer able to trust you because you've restricted so much. So your body biologically creates this urge to binge because it thinks it's starving itself. It thinks you're starving it. And so it wants you to eat food and binge because it's starving and it doesn't know when it's going to get it again. And it wants you to eat the foods that you're not letting yourself eat because they are going to fill you up with as much like fat, calories, and, sustenance, if you will, long lasting energy. Oh my gosh, I'm getting sidetracked.
No, this is fascinating. Keep going.
Full permission. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of times people, they totally reject the idea of intuitive eating because it's like, oh, I remember this one lady. Oh my gosh. She was like commenting on one of my videos a couple years ago and I just remember it. But I was talking about giving yourself full permission to eat. And you can only say so much in a 3-minute video. So like, please give me some grace. But anyways, so I was talking about, I don't know, whatever, giving yourself full permission to eat. And this woman got really upset. And she was just kind of like, yelling at me online, if you will, like in her comment, like, how dare you say that? So what, I'm going to eat all the cheesecake and I'll, blow up and get diabetes because that's giving myself full permission to eat. Yes. And when you've done the work, when you've given yourself full permission to eat, you won't want to eat 10 cheesecakes because it doesn't work that way. Initially, yeah, probably you will want 10 cheesecakes because you have to do that uncomfortable kind of transition period to kind of get to the other side. So yeah, a lot of times I'd say people will use it as the hunger fullness diet to lose weight, or they either won't even try it because of the giving yourself full permission, afraid of weight gain, or they'll stay stuck in the giving yourself full permission and then just turn it into like a life of binging because they don't have somebody they're working with, which is really the pitfall.
Right. Well, I really loved how you said it's a trust issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of, we're told all the time that our gut is our second brain. And so it's going to communicate with you.
Yeah.
And so if it's communicating distrust and self-preservation, because its job is to keep you alive,
yep,
then, obviously you're going to have some consequences from that. So
absolutely.
So by giving yourself permission to eat, you are establishing that trust again.
Yep.
So I just think that is such a beautiful progress, that of healing that you can do it. But that had to have been so hard for you.
It was. I mean, it's really hard. It's hard for most people. It's really hard for most people. And most people want to give up. And it's like, you cannot give up before the miracle happens, because it's right around the corner. The other thing that I want to point out with intuitive eating and why it can be so confusing is because it's like a way of living. So we're talking about trust. So if I'm dieting and I'm in a place where I can no longer trust myself, I live my life by all these external rules with whatever they are. When I'm able to trust myself again with food, I remember it being very interesting when I was going through it. It was like, like I can trust myself more with other things too. Like it seems to be a little bit easier for me to make decisions now. And maybe I feel a little bit more trusting with like my finances. And I'm just a little bit more confident with business decisions. So it's just this whole like kind of reset in your brain. And it is the biggest like gift I've ever received in like the self-work that I've done, because I'm the same person, but like I'm also a totally different person. I live in a different world.
Wow. So how do you guide somebody through that transition?
Yeah. Well, it's not easy. And everyone is so different. So, it's hard to give just like statement kind of answer because everyone really is so individualistic. But where I really start, kind of no matter what, is the very first thing is like, okay, give me your 24-hour food recall. I'll just kind of note it down, kind of see, where your baseline is at, how you eat, what you eat. And then the first thing we do is we have to start eating consistently, adequately, and appropriately. And if you don't know where to start, I always say 3 to 6 times a day, a combination of meals and snacks. And there's probably, if you're somebody that's, coming to work with me and you're already doing the binge restrict thing, it's going to continue for a while. It just is. But your
Yeah.
thinking is going to start to change. It's like the seed will be planted and it slowly changes. And what typically happens, and again, why it's so crucial to work with somebody, because you can't see what's happening. So almost every single person I've worked with and I work with now, they show up to session and they're like, I'm so pissed. I just like can't stop overeating. And I'm like, say it again. And I like have this smile and they say it. And I'm like, you're not binging. When was the last time you binged? And they're kind of like, oh, I guess it's been like a month. And I'm like, did you hear yourself? You're no longer binging.
And it's
Okay.
such a nuance, but what a win.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
Seriously. I mean,
cool.
it's huge. Like you came to me because you didn't want to binge and you're not doing it. Now you're overeating. Guess what? We're gonna work on that too. And then maybe then it will just be emotional eating. And then and it just keeps going forward. But when you're doing this alone, what often happens is, well, it's not working anyways. I'm still overeating. And then you just give up and stop and go on the diet. When it's
Right.
like, no, you couldn't see your progress. So,
And I think that's so common. We're so close to the trees in the forest that we don't have that perspective. And that's the value of having a coach and having some outside help. So that's super amazing. Okay, so I'm curious, what are your thoughts on like food journaling and like
mm,
counting your macros and stuff like that?
okay.
'Cause that's so big. That is so
Oh,
huge
I
in
know.
fitness society, right?
Yes. Okay. So for the people I work with, we do not do that. If you are a normie, meaning you've never had or you don't have disordered eating, you truly are an intuitive eater, I would want to know, okay, why? Like, what's the reasoning? And let's talk that out. Like, so, because oftentimes people will say, oh, I'm counting my macros because my doctor said I need to bring down my cholesterol. And it's like, okay, well, does your doctor know anything about nutrition? Most likely no. And let's talk about your cholesterol. And I'm not a doctor or a dietitian, so like, I don't get into those types of conversations, but like, so let's go see, like, let's see a dietitian that is also an intuitive eating dietitian. And let's let her look at the blood work and see what she says about it. And maybe it's like, just eat a little bit less cheese for the cholesterol piece. So in general, I'm not for counting calories, counting macros, food journaling, because it's bringing it to the forefront of your brain, and
Hmm.
it's like kind of feeding the obsession. It's like you're thinking about the calories and the macros and okay, what did I eat? What can I eat? It's just it's giving it too much power. And that's me. Again, I work with people that struggle with food and body stuff. So if you're a normie, if you're already an intuitive eater, again, I just want to know, like, let's talk about it. Why?
What a great answer. And I and and honestly, I feel like, oh, you've just given me permission not to do that.
You don't have to do it,
I don't
Brenda.
have
You
to do
don't have to
that.
do it.
I don't have to feel guilty for not doing it.
No, not at all. In fact, like embrace it. Embrace not doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. So many good things. Okay. So we are just about out of time. So I just want you to kind of just let everybody know, like, because we've talked about you've got a therapy side of your business as well as a coaching side. So what are the difference between those two and what you offer to people?
Great question. Okay. So therapy, like kind of the biggest differences are, so for therapy, for me, I'm licensed in California, so you have to be in California to do therapy with me. Um, Therapy also, you get a diagnosis. So most people in therapy have some kind of, I don't know, disorder, if you will. Um, I don't work with insurance companies, but I can provide you a super bill, which means you can take that super bill, give it to your insurance company, and they can reimburse you. So those are all kind of like the general things about therapy. But therapy also is for people that need a certain level of care.
Right.
It's for people that really want that like individualized attention and work. And we get into all the things and you kind of lead. I mean, I always come to session with like ideas and anything to talk about, but I kind of let you lead. And I ask a lot of, clarifying questions and okay, say more about what you just said. And we go back into your upbringing and it's just really kind of like deep and rich. Now with coaching, you can live anywhere in the world, which is my favorite part of it. I'm not going to give you a disorder or a diagnosis. Well, of course, I'm not going to give you a disorder. I'm not going to give you a diagnosis because I can't.
Right, right.
I'm not going to give you a super bill. And it's and for me, the biggest difference I see in my work is, are you appropriate for coaching? I have worked with people with active eating disorders in coaching, and it's not my favorite thing to do. And I've done it for certain reasons because they had no other help or no other option. So it was like, I'd rather you work with someone than no one. But typically speaking, like, you don't have an active eating disorder when we're doing coaching together. And in my coaching program, I'm super excited about it. I just finished a food freedom breakthrough course that's part of my coaching program, and it's digital. It has videos and workbooks, and seriously, it was so much work. I'm really proud of it. But yeah, so my coaching program is also a group, so it's really rich, and yeah, there's just a lot of elements to it.
So it really just depends on where you're at in that spectrum. If,
Yep.
what kind of care you totally need. Well, I just think it's super cool that you've got that wide range, so
Yeah.
you can do the follow-up to the therapy side of it,
Hmm.
and take it a little bit further. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, so if somebody wants to reach you, how can they find you online?
Yes. Okay. So online, social media, I'm Food Freedom with Libby, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. My website, everything is like Libby Supan. So Food Freedom with Libby. My website is Libby at Libby Supan. Wait, sorry. Website is libbysupan.com. Email is, oh my gosh, maybe you're going to hopefully delete this part. Email is Libby at libbysupan.com. Website is libbysupan.com. I also have, I think there'll be like a link for my freebie in the show
Yes,
notes.
yes. Please tell us about
Yeah.
that. What do you have for
Okay.
our listeners?
So really cool stuff. So I think the coolest thing in there is a food freedom ebook. So it's a whole workbook, and it comes with journal pages, and it walks you through all the principles. I think that's a really like cool thing. And then there's about like a 6.5 minute video where I truly am walking you through, this is how you eat intuitively with food. And then with that comes like a little handout exercise. I think it's called food check-in exercise, and the hunger scale. And you use those things while you're doing the video and learning how to eat intuitively using food. And then I think there's also a handout in there called the 3Ds: delay, distract, and decide. And I can go into that if you want me to, but it's in the freebies.
Well, and so it's all explained in there how to
Yeah.
do that. That is quite
Yeah.
the bundle. So
Yeah.
if you are listening to this, I would really encourage you to just check it out. I think just to understand for anybody what intuitive eating is and
I
to take
agree.
a deeper dive into that. And, you know, knowledge is power.
I know.
And man, if
I know.
you can understand how mentally that works and intuition and using your intuition to know what your body needs in the moment, what a phenomenal skill. I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you
I
have
agree.
any closing nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
I've said this so much throughout our episode, but if you're someone who struggles with food and you're doing the binge restrict thing, look at the restriction and really ask yourself, like, kind of, what am I doing? Is this something I want to keep doing for forever? Do I want to keep dieting my whole life? Like, I'm going to assume no. And so look at the restriction and start to eat three to six times a day and reach out for help. That's what I want to leave you with.
Wonderful. Thank you, Libby. This has
Thank you
been
so much,
such a
Brenda.
great conversation. I've just
I
enjoyed
know.
it, and I hope that we can stay in contact.
Me too. Thank you, Brenda.
All right, take care. Isn't Libby wonderful? I knew this would be an amazing conversation, and indeed it was. I really loved how she brought up how restrictions were what really influenced her down this path of food. Um, I don't want to say disorder, but maybe that's what it was, this food disorder. I have seen this so many times in my life where we restrict so much that eventually we rebel in some way. And with her, where she was restricting her food, she rebelled then in the binge eating. What a wonderful journey to be able to see what was going on and to finally have that freedom of understanding that process of restriction and binge eating. I think it's something that we can take into our lives and go, okay, well, how else can I apply this in my life? Am I restricting myself so severely in other areas that maybe I'm binging as a result of it? Doesn't have to necessarily be food. Or am I rebelling in some way that is not healthy for me? I think it's a really good thing to ask ourselves. I loved the honesty and the vulnerability that she shared. And I think that we've got to do that with ourselves as well. We have to be super honest with what is actually going on, not just the results, but what's leading up to that to give us those results. I loved her term food freedom and to really be able to experience life at its fullest with what it was meant to be. And one of the other things that I really loved was how she said she doesn't eat anything that she doesn't like to eat. If it's not good, if it doesn't taste good, she's not eating it. And I can't tell you how many times I'm like, what I'm eating is total crap. And I just am not, why am I eating this? I've done that so many times. And so that, what a healthy boundary to have. If it doesn't taste good, don't eat it. And, really listen to your body. I thought she was phenomenal. And I encourage everybody to just go in to her free bundle and just to check out what the principles of intuitive eating is, because I think that can help everybody in the whole entire world. So check her out. I'll have her contact information and all of her links down in the show notes. And I hope you take a lesson from Libby. She took something that was really hard in her life and she not only healed from it, but then now is helping other people to heal. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's everybody's calling, but she found purpose in her trial. And I think that is what is applicable to everybody. We can find purpose in our trials. We can find purpose in the struggles that we have day to day. And so I hope that this has been helpful to you. If it has, please share it. Please like it and follow it. That really helps me to get the message out, and it helps Libby to get her message out too. I hope all of you know that your purpose can be found in your story. Until next time, take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your light